Hi, I'm painting a Bob Ross style painting on 16 times 20 canvas. I prime my canvas once with white gesso and let it dry, and then I put a layer of liquid white to make a wet on wet technique. I'm making crisscross strokes and blending the sky, and you want it darker at the top and blend it down to lighter. I used a mixture of phthalo blue and midnight black for the sky. Much more blue than black. I decided to make the corners a little bit darker to make it stand out more. I'm using a fan brush and making circular motion to make the clouds. I use titanium white and a little bit of crimson into the clouds. I like putting the clouds a little bit in the darker areas to make them pop more. I blend the bottom of the clouds to make it look fluffy. I mix phthalo blue and a little bit of phthalo green into the water, and you want to start from the bottom and brush towards the inner part to make the effect of water, and move it up and it should go a little bit lighter towards the top. Here I'm using a mixture of crimson and phthalo blue, more phthalo blue than the crimson, to make background trees and to kind of have them a little bit darker in the back. I'm tapping the bottom to make a misty effect. Then I'm adding another layer in front of it, so there's going to be 2 layers of the trees. I tap the bottom of the trees to make a misty effect just using the top of the brush. Here I'm coming back, I mixed raw umber and a little bit of paint thinner, and then I made some tree limbs. Here I'm starting to put on the highlights. I use sap green, I use cadmium yellows and lemon yellow and yellow ochre for the highlights. I also mix the sap greens with the yellows to kind of get the different colors. I loaded the brush one way, so you pull it through your paint, and then you get a lot of paint at the tip of it and flip it over, and then you apply it to your canvas. The misty area kind of separates from the highlights and gives it a better effect. Here I mix alizarin crimson and raw umber together and started making and forming some shapes and rocks or dirt in the background. I mix burnt sienna, white, and a little bit of crimson together for some of the highlights, or also some just burnt sienna and white or titanium white just to highlight the background. I put phthalo blue and phthalo green to make the darker color and pre-added in the waterfall. You gotta add a lot of dark before the light would show. Here I'm adding a mixture of titanium white and liquid white to make it thin out the paint, to make it glide over the thicker paint. As you're making the waterfall, you can wipe your brush on a paper towel and reload to get fresh paint in between brushing the waterfall. I'm making the mist and the foam at the bottom of the waterfall. As I'm painting the water, I'm thinking about the water hitting rocks and making splashes and moving it back and forth. To contain the waterfall, I use raw umber and midnight black to make it pretty dark for the cliffs. As you're making the cliffs, you want to think about starting at the waterfall and then working your way out and kind of think of the scene coming towards you. I thought to add some bushes to the background to kind of help fill and make it more interesting to look at. I'm adding some of the same colors to the highlights. Um, Yellow ochre, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, sap green, and this time I put a little bit of alizarin crimson into the mixture of the greens and yellows. For the highlights for the cliffs, I'm using a mixture of titanium white, little alizarin crimson, and burnt sienna for the highlights. You want to start next to the waterfall and work your way out, thinking about the picture coming towards you. To make the shadows, I did a mixture of phthalo blue, midnight black, and a little bit of titanium white to make the shadows for the cliffs. For the pine trees, I mix alizarin crimson, midnight black, raw umber, and phthalo blue together to get the dark shadows of the pine trees and the bushes. Oh, also a little bit of sap green in the mixture. To do this, you want to use quite a bit of paint, so really fill your fan brush up with a lot of paint to do this. I made burnt sienna and titanium white to make the limbs inside the pine trees. For the highlights, I mix cadmium yellow or lemon yellows with the mixture, the dark mixture, and it makes a very dark green. Also, to get your paint to stick, you want to mix liquid white to the colors of the yellows, sap greens, and that will help get it to stick on the thick paint. For the highlights here, I used a lot of liquid white and alizarin crimson to make a pink color, and then also the yellows and saps green to kind of give it different colors. I was thinking about making some reflections, so you pull it straight down and then go across. For the reflections again, make sure to pull straight down and go across. For the water is titanium white and liquid white. For the rocks, I used a mixture of raw umber and midnight black. If you're making rocks, you always want to make them smaller towards the background. As they come forward, always make them gradually bigger and bigger, and makes the effect of they're further away. I also dip my brush into the liquid white to really make it thin paint to do all this. To highlight the rocks, it's a mixture of burnt sienna and titanium white. Then I go back and add more white around the rocks to make them look like they're in the water. When the water goes over the rocks, I always think about the water at the base. It splashes, so you always tap the brush at the bottom. Also, I went back and highlighted the rocks again with a mixture of titanium white and alizarin crimson to give them more of a highlight look. As I'm using the palette knife to highlight, you want to barely touch the rocks when you do that. I took liquid white and pulled down on the rocks to make it where it looks like the water splashing up onto the rocks. As the water is coming towards you, you just think about it's getting bigger and bigger coming towards you. I'm also tapping and blending out the water, thinking about it's splashing and it's moving. I constantly blend it back and forth. I decided to put a lot of flower petals, and I used alizarin crimson and titanium white, and I dipped the brush on one side titanium white and one side alizarin crimson and did the one stroke for the petals. As I'm painting the petals, I'm thinking about they're just flowing down the river and they're stopping on the rocks and they are in the water. For each petal, I'm blending the bottom of them to make them look like they're in the water. For the petals further away, always try to make them smaller, and as they come closer, always try to make the petals get bigger and bigger. I also take the palette knife and will rub back and forth with white at the tip of them, and to kind of get more of a watery effect on the flowers as well. Thank you for watching and have a great day.